Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to tackle something that can feel, well, a little overwhelming. A consent form for inducing labor with a medication called Misoprostol. It can definitely look intimidating with all the medical jargon. But trust me, by the end of this, you'll get what every section means. The goal here is to help you feel totally prepared to have a confident conversation with your doctor.
All right, so let's just dive right in with a term that trips a lot of people up, off-label. It just sounds a little sketchy, doesn't it? But in the medical world, it has a very, very specific meaning. So we're going to unpack what it really is, and just as importantly, what it isn't. Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with why a doctor might recommend an induction in the first place. Then we'll get into the specifics of the medication itself. After that, we'll weigh the good against the bad, the benefits versus the risks. We'll also look at the other options on the table. And finally, we'll land on the most important piece of the puzzle, your absolute right to consent. First up, let's talk about the starting line for this whole journey. That moment when your doctor sits down with you and suggests an induction of labor. So, why does this happen? And what does it actually mean to start labor artificially? So, to be super clear, we're not talking about waiting for labor to kick off naturally here. A medical induction is a proactive choice. It means using medicine or a specific procedure to actually start the process of childbirth. And understanding that difference is really the foundation for this whole conversation about consent. Okay, so now let's zoom in on the specific medication that's often at the center of this consent form. It's called Misoprostol, though you might also hear its brand name, which is Cytotec. This medication basically has a two-part job. You can kind of think of it as a 1-2 punch to get labor going. First, its job is to ripen the cervix. That just means making it softer and thinner so it's ready for delivery. Then, part 2 is helping to kickstart the uterine contractions that are needed for labor to really get underway. And this brings us right back to that off-label question. So all it means is that the FDA originally approved this drug for a completely different reason. Now, this is super important. It does not mean the drug is experimental or untested for labor induction. It's just that its first approved use was for something else entirely. And this slide, wow, it really lays out the two different points of view perfectly. On one side, you have the FDA, who originally gave it the green light for preventing stomach ulcers. But on the other side, you have ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the leading experts, and they recognize it as a safe and effective way to induce labor, based on years and years of research and clinical use. This kind of off-label use is actually pretty common in medicine. So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, it's a very careful, very structured process. It's not a one-and-done kind of thing. It starts with a small dose, and then more doses are given every few hours depending on how your body responds. And the absolute key to the whole thing is continuous monitoring. The entire time, you and the baby are being watched very, very closely to make sure everything is safe and on track.
Okay, so with any medical choice, you've got to look at both sides of the coin, right? It's all about weighing the pros and cons. So what are the potential upsides of using misoprostol? And what are the potential downsides that you really need to have on your radar?
So here's how it breaks down. The benefits are really about efficiency, getting labor started, making it stronger, and maybe even shortening the overall time until delivery. The risks are all about how the body might react. The main worry is that the contractions could become too strong or too frequent. There's a medical term for it, tachysystole, and that can put stress on the baby. And in some cases, that could lead to needing an emergency C-section.
Now, it's also really important to talk about these less common but much more serious potential risks. Things like a uterine rupture, which is a tear in the uterine wall, or an amniotic fluid embolism are very, very rare, but they are part of the full picture. Knowing about all the potential outcomes, even the rare ones, is what makes consent truly informed. Okay, this is so important to remember. Misoprostol is not a one-way street. A huge part of giving consent is knowing that you have other options. This is just one tool in the medical toolbox. It's definitely not the only one. So what else is out there? Well, there are other medications like Pitocin that you'd get through an IV. There are also mechanical methods that don't use medication at all, like a small balloon catheter that gently helps open the cervix. And, depending on your specific situation, sometimes the simplest alternative is an option too, just waiting for labor to start on its own. And that brings us to the final, and honestly, the most critical part of this whole explainer. This entire process comes down to your understanding, your questions, and, at the end of the day, your decision. You are an active partner in your own healthcare. You are not a passenger here. You are the co-pilot.
So, when you sign that consent form, what are you really saying? It's so much more than just a signature on a line. It's a confirmation. You're saying, I get it. I understand why we're doing this. I know this drug is used off label. I've heard the good, the bad, and the other choices. And yes, I've had all my questions answered.
And this statement right here, this might be the most empowering sentence in the entire document. This is huge. Your consent is not a binding contract that's locked in forever. It is an ongoing agreement. You have the right to change your mind at any point, right up until the moment that medication is given. Your autonomy is everything. So, we want to leave you with this final thought. Is informed consent just about that piece of paper you sign, or is it about the conversation that gets you there? At the end of the day, it's that dialogue, that partnership you build with your healthcare team that makes sure the choices being made are the right ones for you. That's the real goal, for you to feel informed, respected, and totally confident in your care.